I was folding towels when I heard it. Thursday afternoon, soft with quiet. The sun came in at a lazy angle through the hallway window, dust floating like slow ash in the light. I had just pulled the last set of linens from the dryer, white ones the good kind, and was carrying them through the hallway when I stopped just outside the spare room. My room. The door was slightly ajar. Could hear voices. Emily's and someone else's, her sister I think. The one with the clipped voice and long nails that tap on everything. "I love the light in here," the sister said. "It's the best room in the house." "It really is," Emily replied, laughing. "This is going to be the nursery." Was. The air held still. "Once she moves out." Just like that. No edge in her voice. No hesitation. Just a smile I couldn't see and a decision I was never invited into. I didn't move. The towels grew heavier in my arms. A corner slid loose and brushed my knuckles. They kept talking, paint colors, rocking chairs, maybe a mural with stars. I don't remember. My ears were ringing. I turned away quietly and walked back to the laundry room, placing the towels down one by one, as if they were fragile, though none of them were. That night, at dinner, no one said a word about it. They asked if I'd picked up the milk. I had. They asked if I'd seen the missing sock. I had not. No one asked if I'd heard what they'd said. And so I didn't answer. Over the next few days, the house shifted. Not in any loud way. There was no packing, no boxes in the hallway. Just subtle rearrangements. My armchair, the one I brought from my old apartment, the one with the faded floral pattern and the flattened cushion, disappeared from the corner of the living room. I noticed it on Saturday morning. The corner looked too empty, and yet no one said anything. When I asked, Emily smiled and said, "Oh, we just moved it to the garage for now. We're making space." Making space. I nodded and poured more coffee. It wasn't worth asking what for. Already knew. Later that day, I opened the wardrobe in my bedroom and found my dresses pushed to one side. A tall cardboard box stood in the space where my coat usually hung. On top of it, a folded baby blanket. In the bathroom, my toiletries had been rearranged. Not taken, not discarded, just moved. As if I already didn't live here. As if I had become a guest in a house I once gave away. It was almost funny. Years ago, when Daniel, my son, asked me to move in with them, he said it would be temporary. Just until they got on their feet. Just until the baby was born. That was 9 years ago. Gave up my lease. Sold my furniture. Signed the condo over to help them qualify for a bigger mortgage. "They're your family," my sister had said. "It's only natural to help." Now my help had grown roots so deep, they didn't notice me in the soil anymore. That evening, Emily left catalogs on the kitchen table. One of them had a sticky note on a page showing a white crib and a pale green wall. It said, "Maybe sage green. Not too loud." I ran my thumb over the paper and quietly turned the page. I didn't tell them I was going. It was Tuesday. Mid-morning. The kind of day that slips between calendar pages unnoticed. Emily had her prenatal yoga class. Daniel was at work. The house felt hollow. I put on my navy coat, the one they always said was too heavy for spring, and walked 3 blocks to the bus stop. I carried only my small purse and a folded envelope with the address. The ride was quiet. Few people got on, a few got off. I sat by the window, watching streets blur past. Children in uniforms. A man walking a dog. A yard full of tulips just starting to bow their heads. I arrived just before lunch. The home wasn't what I expected. No linoleum, no television humming in the corner. Just a narrow path lined with low lavender bushes and a porch swing that creaked slowly in the wind. The sign read Ashfield Place. For living, not just staying. A young woman greeted me in the foyer. Her voice was warm but not false. She showed me a room. Small, clean, with a single window that looked out onto a patch of garden. There was a desk. A bed with a quilt. Small bookshelf. Chair by the window. No nursery catalogs. No boxes. Just stillness. She said the room was unoccupied, that they had a short waiting list, but I could add my name. No pressure. Some people just come to sit, she said. To feel what it's like. I did. I sat in the chair and looked out the window. A breeze moved the branches of a birch tree. Somewhere, someone was playing the piano, notes drifting down the hallway like loose thread. I sat there for almost an hour. When I left nothing behind. But something had settled inside me. Not a plan. Not yet. Just the feeling of what it might be like to be somewhere that didn't wait for me to leave before becoming something else. I returned home just after 2. The sun had shifted. The light came in low now, cutting across the hallway in long, warm stripes. I stood by the front door for a moment, my hand on the frame, listening. Nothing. No one had noticed I'd gone. I walked to my room, the room I used. The one where the catalogs now lived, stacked neatly on the nightstand beside Emily's prenatal vitamins. I opened the closet and stood in front of it. Not lost, just still. I pulled out my suitcase from beneath the bed. The same one I used the day I moved in, still smelling faintly of cedar and airport terminals. I unzipped it, laid it open on the bed, and sat beside it. I didn't pack everything, only what was mine. 3 sweaters. The pale blue shawl I knitted the winter Daniel turned 13. 2 photo frames. One of my husband on our back porch, one of Jacob when he was small and still called me Grandmaelle. From the drawer I took my old address book. Not to keep in touch. Just to have the names I chose to remember. I left the rest. The framed cross-stitch Emily had once given me. Home is where the heart is. I left that on the wall. Let it decorate the new nursery. I folded everything slowly, as if I were closing a chapter, one soft edge at a time. Then I opened the window. Just enough to let in the sound of birds. Just enough to breathe. I didn't write a note. Not yet. But I placed the empty teacup from my morning ritual in the center of the desk, and beside it, the application form for Ashfield Place. Unsigned, unmailed. A small reminder to myself. This is real. The decision wasn't made in a storm. It was made in stillness. And stillness was where I would return. I woke before dawn. The house was still. No footsteps, no appliances humming. Just the creak of the floor beneath my slippers and the wind brushing softly against the kitchen window. I boiled water for tea. While it steeped, I wrapped the last of my things. A book of short stories, a tin of Earl Grey, my garden gloves, though I no longer had a garden. I didn't leave anything personal behind, except the room itself. On the bed, I left the catalogs in a neat pile. On top of them, a single envelope. Inside, the house key. My name, carefully scratched off the list of emergency contacts. No letter. No explanation. But on the back of the envelope, I wrote one line in pencil. I left before you could ask me to. I stood for a moment in the hallway. Daniel's office door was closed. So was Jacob's room. Emily always slept with the door half open, just enough to let the hallway light in case he had nightmares. I had stood in that hallway so many nights, holding a glass of water or a storybook. But I didn't knock. Instead, I turned the handle on the front door slowly and stepped outside. My suitcase rolled behind me with a sound that felt louder than I wanted it to. The air was cool. The kind of cool that doesn't quite wake you but reminds you that you're real. By the time the bus came, the sky had begun to pale at the edges. I didn't look back at the house. Not because I was angry, but because it had already become someone else's. The bus ride was quiet. No one asked where I was going. I suppose I looked like any other woman with a suitcase and no one waiting. That was a kind of freedom in its way. Ashfield Place appeared just after a curve in the road. The same low building, the porch swing still moving faintly in the breeze, like it had never stopped since my last visit. The woman at the desk remembered me. She didn't say, "You're back." She just smiled gently and said, "We have the key ready." The room was exactly as I remembered. Window, but quilt, no crib, no boxes in the corner, no catalogs waiting for permission. I placed the suitcase on the floor and stood still for a moment, letting the quiet settle. Not silence, quiet. The kind that holds space. Anne packed slowly. The shawl went over the back of the chair. My two photographs stood side by side on the small dresser, not to look back, just to say, yes, that happened. I slid the book of short stories into the shelf and hung my sweaters in the narrow closet. That was all. No clutter. No shared corners. Just enough. Later I stepped outside to the small garden behind the building. A narrow path wound through wild lavender and crooked paving stones. There was a bench under a chestnut tree. A woman I didn't know passed me with a watering can. She nodded. "Your room is the quiet one," she said. I smiled, not correcting her. "It is now." That night I couldn't sleep. The quiet was too soft, too honest. No pipes ticking. No doors closing in another part of the house. Just the sound of leaves brushing the window and the slow breath of my own being. I got up and made tea. In the small kitchen down the hall, the kettle was older than mine, but it sang the same. I stood by the window while the steam rose, watching the garden turn silver in the moonlight. Back in my room, I pulled out the small wooden box I'd packed in the side pocket of my suitcase. Inside it, a few folded things. A sonogram printout Emily once left on the fridge. Jacob's birthday drawing from when he was 6. A sun, a stick house, and the word "Grandma" written too wide. A thank you card from Daniel, faded from long ago, back when I had just moved in. "Don't know what we'd do without you." I unfolded each, touched the edges, then laid them in a line on the desk. Then I reached for my scissors. Not with anger. Just a quiet kind of boundary. I cut them gently, into strips, then squares, then smaller. Until the pieces were only shapes, no words. No images. Just weightless paper. Then I slid them into the teacup, still warm, and covered them with a last spoonful of jasmine leaves. I left the cup on the windowsill. Nothing dramatic. Just a small container of what no longer needed to be kept. Then I turned off the light and returned to bed. For the first time in years I slept through the night. Had been 4 years. The seasons passed softly at Ashfield Place. You don't count them here the same way you do in a house full of other people's clocks. You feel them in the soil. In the way the garden leans. In the quiet flicker of routine. I had grown into a rhythm that didn't ask for me to be anyone's mother, anyone's helper, anyone's for now. I kept a small shelf of books. Learned the names of birds by their call. Took my tea without sugar and began to forget what my old chair even looked like. No one from the house on Sycamore Lane ever wrote. Not Daniel. Not Emily. Not until Jacob. It was a Thursday. The post came late, as it often did. Among the newsletters and clinic pamphlets, there was a slim envelope, cream-colored. No return address. Just my name in tall, unhurried handwriting. The kind of handwriting that had learned not to press too hard. Inside, a short letter. "Hey, I'm 16 now. I think you left when I was 9. I remember the way you smelled like cinnamon sometimes. No one ever told me why you left. I don't need to know. But I wanted you to know I still remember. Found your old mug. The one with the chip. I drink tea from it now. Jasmine. Think it helps. Just wanted to say that. Jacob." There was no return address. Just his name. I held the letter in both hands and sat with it for a long while. Not moved by grief. Not stung by memory. Just still. I didn't cry. But I did light a candle that night. Not as a ritual. Not as an answer. Just a flicker. The next morning, I placed the letter in the same wooden box where I once kept things I thought I needed to remember. This time I didn't fold it. I let it rest flat, undisturbed. Not because it was sacred, but because it didn't have to be hidden. The morning was still. Light stretched across the walls in straight lines, soft and deliberate. The air in the room carried the dry scent of old leaves, as if the garden had crept inside overnight. Eleanor rose earlier than usual, not out of urgency, just a quiet sense that something final needed to be done today. Gently, without announcement. On the nightstand lay a slim book. Short stories with soft endings, pages that didn't demand to be turned. She opened the cover, slipped a blank sheet of paper inside. Not a letter, not a message. Just a presence. Then she closed the book. It was enough. She stepped into the garden slowly. The stones on the path were damp. The garden breathed low to the ground. Lavender, mint, thin trees shifting without sound. The bench under the chestnut tree was empty. She placed the book at its center, aligned it carefully so it wouldn't tilt, then turned back. Not so anyone would see her, but so someone could. Back in her room, she hung her coat on the hook, returned the teacup to the shelf, and sat by the window. Nothing in the room felt borrowed. Nothing waited to be removed. By evening, the sun had crossed the window's edge and settled onto the sill. The curtain moved slightly in the breeze. On the desk, nothing. In the box, a letter. Beyond the door, not family, not absence. Just there. Without debt.